Today we're going to be reviewing a trim removal tool by Goldblatt. Now this is great for removing trim around windows, doors, baseboard trim, anything like that. Now the reason I chose this particular trim removal tool is some of the other ones, the entire tool pivots. And so when that happens, this is the only surface area on the drywall, you can dent and possibly even punch through the drywall. This particular tool, just the center section pivots out. So we have a lot of nice surface area on there for contact on the drywall, and so we're not going to punch through and we're not going to damage it. So it's a nice thick gauge steel, and we have a nice beveled edge, nice sharp edge there to get down in between the wall and the trim without creating any damage to the trim if you would be trying to salvage it to reuse it. Now your alternative to using a trim removal tool is pry bar and a hammer. And this limited surface area, you almost always punch through the drywall if you're not directly on a stud. And if you are on a stud, you're going to dent the drywall, and now you have to mud it to smooth that over. So this tool is very easily worth its expense. Now the first clip I'm going to show you is me using this tool for the first time on baseboard trim on a job I was doing. Now this is 1/2 inch thick solid pine trim, and it was held on by 16 gauge finish nails. Typically trim is held on by brad nails. I personally use about 1.5 inch 18 gauge brad nails. Trim is not falling off. Nobody's pulling on it. It's not structurally integral to the house. So there's no reason to go crazy with 16 gauge finish nails. To show you the difference there, let's take a look at each. So here's what's holding that trim on in that clip. 16 gauge, 2.5 inch long finish nails. And here's what I typically use. 18 gauge, 1.5 inch long brad nails. The trim is only 1/2 inch thick, so you're getting 1 inch penetration into the subwood. So it's going to hold the trim on there just fine. Again, I don't see the need to go crazy with finish nails. If you are trying to reuse your trim, going overboard with this large of a nail, it makes the trim almost impossible to remove, or you're going to break it, damage it, and you could also cause damage to the door if it's around like an entry door, things like that. So again, this is all I use. So let's go ahead and see how this works out. Run the razor blade along the edge of the trim here to cut through the paint that's sticking to the trim, so that when we pull the trim off, we don't chip the paint. Take trim removal tool. This is down under the carpet, so it's a little bit harder, but we still got it out of there pretty good. And it's held on by very long brads. You can see how far down and under the carpet that was. But it still worked out very well and didn't damage the drywall at all. So again, what you saw there was 1/2 inch thick solid pine held on by 2.5 inch long 16 gauge finish nails. The carpet and padding on that was so thick, I didn't realize how far down in the trim was under that carpet and padding. And so you saw where I was pulling it off by hand, and I actually broke it. That's how hard that trim was on there. And you saw the tool was still able to remove it. That's a huge testament to the tool, that even with all that force pushing against the carpet and the under padding, it still did not dent that drywall. So I was highly impressed with it. Once I got it pulled away from the wall, I then lifted up on it and pulled it up out away from the carpet and padding. So again, highly impressed with the durability, and more importantly, the fact that it didn't dent the drywall. Now let's go ahead and take a look at one more example. Now here I put trim on in my basement simply to remove for this demonstration. The first is 5/8 inch thick MDF board. The second is that same 1/2 inch thick pine board. I attached both of them with the 18 gauge 1.5 inch long brad nails. Okay, so I went through and I bradded this trim onto this wall, and it's all bradded down low where it's into the bottom board of the wall. So this is not just a loose nail and drywall. This is trim securely attached. So you're just going to put the tool right between the wall and the trim and hammer it down in. And sometimes just the thickness of the steel might be enough to help start pulling it away. And we just simply lift up on the handle. And from here I can just finish removing this short piece by hand. Now let's take a look at the pine. Now this has a very narrow rounded edge on top. So we're going to angle it a little bit more to get behind that without nicking the trim. And that would only be necessary if you're trying to save the trim. And you can see it's flexing a little bit more because it's solid wood. It's not just popping right off like the MDF board did. So as you see, that trim came off with no issues at all, and that's also partially because, again, I use 1.5" 18 gauge brad nails instead of overkill finish nails. So that sums up my review on this trim removal tool. There's going to be a link in the video description down below on where you can purchase this, or check out my Amazon store where I have some other products on there that I've purchased and used, and I do reviews on those as well. And if you like this review, please subscribe to the channel, hit it with a like. There's going to be more reviews coming on other things I think you will find useful around your home and garage. I really appreciate you watching, and thank you for your support.